Although Pride Month just ended, this timeline seeks to explore, celebrate, and define the history of queer filmmaking and queerness in digital media. This begins in the 1980s and 90s, where queerness cements its roots in digital media. It was simultaneously developing a political identity and a relationship to art in a way that constantly negotiated its position on identity and community. In the context of contemporary film, it can be understood as a meaningful space because of the opportunity it creates to build community. The films themselves call into question life, sexuality, aesthetics, and politics as part of an ongoing queer struggle. We begin with the 1948 film Rope. The politics of queerness in film begins subtextually. Alfred Hitchcock's 1948 film, which has long been a contentious subject of queer theory. No part of the film can be described as explicitly queer, but critics point out the way it represents the cultural association between homosexuality and death. Simultaneously, there are queer scholars who believe Hitchcock evokes these images to criticize them. In 1960, La Dolce Vita is an Italian film release, which calls into question the significance of queer subtext and marginality. Across the 3 hours of the film, gay characters comprise hardly 10 minutes of screen time. However, they were mentioned extensively in reactions to the film by critics and journalists alike. This interrogates what it means to occupy a margin, to blur the distinction between a short-term appearance and a long-term impact. More importantly is that despite harsh responses to the film, there's a sense of belonging visible within the queer characters that invites viewers to seek that experience. A decade later, Bob Fawcett's 1972 film Cabaret, an adaptation of the musical, was the first queer film to succeed at the Oscars. With wins in 8 categories, it became and remains one of the most decorated queer films of all time. It played an important role in enhancing queer visibility in the post-Stonewall era with characters who overtly contest ideas of normative sexual identities. A little after that begins a new queer cinema movement. The 80s and 90s saw an increase in films that were both overtly and subtextually queer. Films like Boys Don't Cry explored the politics of transgender martyrdom. The film was historic as a positive representation of a transgender person in cinema. Changes in queer politics since then have now changed how activists, theorists, and queer people look back on the movie with a more critical lens. And while criticisms may be well founded, the political significance of this film and other releases of the period remain a crucial point in the development of contemporary queer cinema. Which brings us to queer film festivals, the creation of community and space where queer film can be highlighted. Queer film festivals gained traction internationally and highlighted the importance of a shared space for the community within cinema. These festivals prioritize the screening of queer films and artists. There's been varying degrees of queerness expressed by the festivals themselves, ranging from primarily queer exhibitions to festivals that don't explicitly create a queer space or associate themselves with groups, but do make an intention to platform films. In the early 21st century, tensions developed due to the increasing concern that queer identity was being sacrificed for marketability, an ongoing theme within queer artistic movements as they've continued to grow. The image is just the logo for the Melbourne Queer Festival, Queer Film Festival, one of the many that occurs internationally. Others include Hong Kong, in the United States, or in South America. In 1997, Wong Kar-wai's film Happy Together on romance, which is often characterized by missed opportunities or love as an ephemeral experience. In his 97 film, he explores these bleak movements through the story of two men from Hong Kong and Argentina. The film has a more negative take on love, as it explores the feelings of emptiness and loneliness often experienced by queer people who exist on the margins. It's a reminder that queer film exists to tell the stories of queer people as opposed to please heteronormative audiences. In 2016, the first queer film to win Best Pictures at the Oscars, and do so in a remarkable and pretty memorable fashion, was Moonlight. The film explores themes of queerness and Black masculinity, which is part of what makes it so significant. One of the primary criticisms of queer filmmaking and movements has been their failures to be intersectional, but Moonlight parallels and draws on queer theorists as it criticizes hypermasculinity's relationship to Blackness. Director Barry Jenkins employs different techniques to represent the queer experience, such as changing the frames per second when someone is yelling at the main character, or experimenting the field of view. Jenkins truly highlights the way that filmmaking techniques can be used to highlight queerness or represent it in uniquely different ways from other movies at the time or in the status quo. Finally, we call into question the future of queer film. As filmmaking has become more accessible, queer cinema and videography has gone far beyond movies, ranging from short films to analog YouTube videos. There are an increasing number of moves away from the status quo, as artists push the boundaries of the message and the medium. Both optimistic and pessimistic queer imaginary explore the sense of self in increasingly innovative ways. There is no defined answer to the question, where do we go from here? Queerness is activism. but does not always enjoy the burden of always having to theorize difference or make itself legible or illegible. The future of queer film is the future of queer filmmakers, of queer people. At its core, it reflects the ongoing political struggle of queerness in the world around it.
Thank you for watching our History in the Headlines episode. If you enjoyed this series, be sure to like this video and comment on what history you want us to dive into next. If you're interested in how we make our timelines, you should check out Cleovis. Follow us on all of our socials linked in the description.